Howdy dowdy everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Unfictional Soundscape. I am your host, Author Man, and today on the show we are interviewing a legend in the unfiction community, Aidan Elliott. A man who needs no introduction. He's a musician, actor, director, editor, photographer, and videographer, just to name a few of his numerous hats. He's the mind behind such unfiction projects as Factors of Zero, Cave of Shadows, and of course, The Sun Vanished, which not only is comprised of multiple Twitter accounts, it now includes an incredible short film hot and ready for you to watch. Go check it out after the podcast if you haven't already. Aidan, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's nighttime as I'm recording. Aidan, how long have we known each other?
Too long.
Too long? I think that's
or
good.
not long enough, depending on how you look at it.
I'll say both.
Okay, cool.
For the people, I want to give this really quickly. I had said a long time ago, I think it was the Marble Hornets episode, that next episode I was going to have somebody come on that was like one of my best friends. And it was like a brother to me. And then next episode, I want to clarify that I was planning on having Aidan on. That's who I was alluding to. Not that Nick isn't a great guy, but I don't know him nearly as well as I know Aidan. I thought that was funny, and I wanted to clarify that really quickly. Which, by the way, that is how long we've been planning this interview. It's been, God, it's been 3 months. I think we started planning it like 3 months ago. Either way. Yeah,
well, you picked like the weirdest time to be like, hey, let's do an interview, because I was in the midst of making an entire short film, and then like trying to get all of my stuff together to make that happen.
Okay. We'll talk about that in a minute, but yes, I did ask you at an inopportune time, and that was my bad. Speaking of the short film, let's move on into our questions today.
All right.
Aidan, are you planning on continuing the TSV Twitter as a short film or as it is?
I'm not answering that.
Are you willing to confirm or deny any fan theories that you have seen thus far on Twitter or Reddit or YouTube regarding the short film and or the Twitter?
Nope.
What inspired you to make The Sun Vanish, the monsters, ships, dark water, whatever?
I'm not answering that either.
All right, cool. So now that we've weeded out everybody that wanted those, we can get into the real stuff.
Cool.
So what was your process for choosing the music that you included in the short film? Because in the end credits, you have that one song that I can't remember the name of.
Yeah, All I Need by Boom Forest.
Thank you very much. What was the process like for getting that song together for the short film? And would you do anything differently in the process-wise with the knowledge you have now?
Yeah, so it's interesting because even before I wrote a single word for the screenplay for this short film or any previous version of the story, I've had a playlist of songs that I really like, that I think really vibe well with The Sun Vanished as a concept and really get me like inspired to write. And so I'd have like the Spotify playlist with like a bunch of like hours and hours and hours of songs, stuff that I've just curated and found over time, or just stuff that I enjoy that really gets the creative juices flowing. And a lot of Boom Forest music is on that playlist. I've been listening to Boom Forest for years now. They're like a local band in Nashville. I forgot exactly how I stumbled upon them, but because they're not like super popular, but yeah, I really love their music. And so actually it originally was going to be an entirely different song by a different artist that I was going to do for the end credits, but that because I was going through all the right legal channels to get like a real like synced license. That's like what it's called when you when like a movie or a show wants to play a copywritten song, they go to the music publisher and they're like, hey, can we obtain a synced license to be able to play this track on our thing? And that there's like a whole like legal process for that. So I was going through that with this other song and it like totally fell through mostly like for budget reasons. Whenever they were asking for a lot of money, so and I was like thinking to make it work, and then I was going through my playlist again, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, and this song came on, All I Need by Boom Forest. And I was listening to the lyrics, and just the entire, just the vibe of the song was probably a lot closer to what I was writing for the original soundtrack at that time. And I was like, dang, this is like, this totally matches. This is perfect. I'll probably, like, for the Spotify playlist thing, I'll make like a more condensed, curated version of that, and send it out like on Twitter or whatever, and be like, hey, if you want like some of the music that inspired me to make this short film, here's like a short playlist of the songs that really give me the TSV vibes.
Do you think you'll complete that before I put out this episode on Friday?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
I mean, it's already completed. I just gotta send out a link. So
Then I will include it in the description for the episode.
hell yeah, sweet.
Okay. How did you and the actors meet for the short film, and what was it like getting people together to work on it?
Mm. Well, it's kind of an interesting kind of snowball effect, because it really started. I mean, there's kind of a lot of different versions of this thing that have kind of floated around, and I wanted to avoid really doing a real like casting call process for this, because I wanted to keep it small. This is a proof of concept thing, so like save like the real casting, like all of that stuff for like a, when I have a bigger budget, bigger project, whatever, so I can actually, like pay like a professional actors to like be a part of this. So
Mhm.
like everyone involved in the cast and crew were either friends or friends of friends that I knew, that are have a passion for filmmaking to some extent, and were interested in helping me with this project. Um, the first person to actually come on officially was Catherine, the main actress. I've known her for years. She's been doing like just like local theater stuff for a long time, more like musical theater type acting, which is a very different medium. And a lot of the actors who are in theater, and especially that type of theater, usually uh, don't really lend themselves well to cinema, because there's a lot of like facial expressions and reactions and things, like cinema with a camera, you get so close to a person's face, you can see practically every single pore on their face. So like there's a lot more nuance to, I think, to acting, versus like acting on stage. You're like, the direction is usually a lot more, maybe bombastic is maybe too much of a negative connotation, but very over exaggerated acting, so that like the audience can see from far away, and see and understand the acting. But for some reason, like ever since I've known Catherine, she's I've just gotten this inkling that she would be really good on camera. Um and so she was one of the first people that I contacted to play the part of Sky. And I kind of, at that point, it was interesting because I was writing and rewriting the character. And so there's a switch that happens when you cast a character, and then you go back and start to rewrite the script. It kind of changes things, because now you're writing for that actress or actor. And that's super interesting. It was really fun to do. Like once I had a concrete casting for her and Josh, I went back into the script and rewrote some things, and I even worked together with them. We kind of workshopped some of the dialogue to make it feel a little more like a little more natural in their mouths. Josh is one of Catherine's friends, and so I met him through her. And then trying to go down the list, Davey has been a longtime friend of mine. He and I did some film stuff back in high school together, off and on. But he's a really talented guy, and I was really happy to have him on this project. I met Kason through some other friends, and he's an amazing lighting person and really helped bring the lighting to life. Um, and then Kat, my girlfriend, who did helped us with some like assistant stuff on set, but then also did the VFX shot for the ship, and that turned out really well. She is a major in animation, so that was really awesome to have her on this project. So a lot of things where it's just kind of like gathering people that I know who find I find that they're very talented, and we just we just said screw it, let's just make something cool or try to, and I think we did. I think we did something really cool.
I agree. Now, before you gave me that answer, you had talked about how you planned the audio design and the sound and everything before you even started doing any scripting. Walk me through that. Like, what goes through your head to set that up?
Yeah, so for me, I've always had a very, I guess, unconventional way of tackling production from start to finish. For like the vast majority of my projects, I always start out with um, either scoring music, or if the project doesn't have music, doing sound design. Those are like the two things I start out with. Just some like even if I don't end up using that in the final product, just some like hypothetical scenarios of sound really give me a very clear it for me it paints a very clear picture of where I want to go for the tone of the project, and that those like sonically that usually helps then inspire me for what I'm going to write. um so I kind of do all of that backwards, and the Sun Vanished short film is no exception. I started with scoring music before literally anything else, um, because and I mean I did have a few ideas of what I wanted to do, but scoring the music really helps me kind of like pinpoint exactly where I want to go, and it's really beneficial to me. So it's interesting.
Do you have any idea how that would work if you switched into like a director only role, like on a Hollywood film?
Mm, I, gosh, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it would just depend because if if I'm directing if I'm in the director's chair for someone else's baby that they've written, um, then I would probably be in a different mindset anyway, and just trying to capture their vision. Um, but if it is my baby, my project, my vision, I would literally just go home and start start like doing sound design or scoring or something to kind of evoke the vibe that I want and really inspire me. And you know, that isn't something that's entirely foreign, because I know a lot of directors will compile playlists. Like I said before with the Sun Vanish playlist, I do that too. But I go above and beyond and you know, make my own original music in the place of like curating a playlist of already copywritten songs, because a lot of times I like I really like discovering new sonic soundscapes that have never been heard before. And I think like the score that I did for the Sun Vanish, I think a lot of that is very different in a way that I don't think I'd be able to find in a lot of the music that is out there already. So it was really fun getting to score all of that for the short film.
Beautiful. I think it worked out perfectly.
Thanks,
Uh,
man.
my pleasure. Now, as you had just said, you've done pretty much every part of the process. I mean, you've done directing, composing, sound design, acting, editing, producing. If you had to choose, if I walked up to you and I twisted your arm, besides saying "ow, that hurts," what would you say is your favorite part of, or rather, what is the part that comes the easiest to you when it comes to all of those different aspects?
Mm, it's a really good question. I don't, because a lot of it is there's a lot of overlap for me, especially with my own projects, where I'm just kind of doing like, there's a lot of times where it's not like I pick up one hat, put it on my head, and then when I'm done with it, I set it down and then pick up another hat. Usually it's like wearing all of the hats at once or like a bunch of them at once and then moving on. But I guess if I had to pick one thing, it would probably be editing. Um, and I say that because I think editing, like there's so much potential in editing, and a lot of like if you just have unedited footage, there's a billion different ways and different combinations that you could do that, and I love that's why I love like how like certain people and their own editing styles when they bring that to the table, it really creates a unique experience. And a lot of times it's funny too because editing can make or break a film, or it can make or break an ARG, or literally basically any type of art form that involves video or sound. Editing is like one of the most important parts of that structure of building something like that. And I think a lot of times it gets a bit overlooked by people because it's just, oh, it's just editing. But it's like, no, like this is the stuff that makes that, can make or break something. And
Mm.
that's probably what I have the most experience in, just because I've been editing my own videos since I was 5. And I just have a lot of, especially because I haven't had the resources to really go out and film stuff until a bit more recently. Editing has been the thing that I've done the most and the most comfortable in, and really enjoy that playground.
What would you say is your least favorite part, or rather, what is the part that comes the hardest to you in that whole process?
Hmm. Probably acting right now.
Mm.
I have not I've not gotten enough I don't think I've gotten enough experience under my belt to really hone that in the way I would probably like, even just like down to body language, down to like all that stuff. I would love to do more of, but there's a lot of times where I don't I don't really have an excuse to do that, and because I feel like with a lot of my projects I just put myself in front of the camera, but
Mm.
when I'm doing everything else and acting on top of it, I think that's sort of difficult because I'm way more used to everything else, and especially I think making this short film for The Sun Vanished confirmed that suspicion, because I like directing other actors is actually a lot easier than directing yourself, ironically. At least in my case.
Hmm. I think that's interesting that that's the hardest part that comes for you, considering that you probably have the most history with acting rather than like editing or directing or any of that stuff. That's
I
interesting to me.
guess, but I almost don't even I don't I almost don't even really like I don't think about like even like with Factors of Zero, or like the little bit I did with Counting Sheep, or some of the stuff I do with The Sun Vanished. All of that is kind of very basic to me, or it doesn't really. I don't always feel like I'm acting when I'm doing those roles. It's more of like being in front of the camera to like it's a means to an end, rather than like, oh yeah, I'm an actor, like I'm acting right now. Like I almost never feel it that way unless it's someone else's project or someone else is behind the camera. But when I'm doing both, it's a bizarre feeling, because it's not. It's like it doesn't scratch that acting itch, the way you would maybe think it would.
That is fascinating. That is really, really interesting. I had no idea that you felt that way. I don't know how much I feel about that because whenever I act out my own stuff, I'm the opposite, where I feel like I'm more comfortable acting rather than directing.
Mm.
Like directing somebody else is sort of difficult for me in a couple cases, but acting, that's easy. I get inside the head of the character and I act that out, and I embody them as much as I can.
Well, right, but think about, at least to me, this is how I see it. Like if I'm being director and actor at the same time, I have to not only do all of that, like do the acting job entirely, but I also have to keep in the back of my brain the logistical stuff like, okay, where's the camera going? What's happening? Like all of the
Mm.
administrative side of things. I have to keep that role. I can't like turn that off. I have to keep that going while I'm trying to embody this entirely different person in a fictional world that doesn't exist. Yeah,
Mhm.
it just, to me, that's like the one of the most difficult jobs to do. And it amazes me some of these like actor director combos, like John Krasinski in A Quiet Place, or Ben Stiller when he did Walter Mitty. He was acting and directing. Like that stuff just blows my mind that they can do that. I think that takes a lot of talent for sure.
Or Shane. Oh God, what's his name? Shane, the fellow that directed Primer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole. But I do think with Primer, it's maybe even a little bit easier, only because that's like such a small scale film where it
Yes.
was just a couple of dudes with a camera, and they were just like, well, let's make a movie. But like
Mhm.
with in Ben Stiller and John Krasinski's case, they had a whole production that
Yeah.
they at their beck and call, asking them questions, trying to figure everything out while they're also trying to be in a role. That sounds nuts to me. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
That's fascinating. The reception of the short film has been very positive. I've been very pleased with what people have been saying. However, I would be remiss to ignore the folks that felt like it was somewhat lacking.
yeah.
Specifically, their distaste for the romance. Why do you
Mm.
think these folks missed the point?
Ooh, that's a very loaded question. Uh,
Good.
I yeah, I think the reason why they've maybe missed the point, or don't like the romance, I think is because they maybe haven't paid enough attention to the focus of where everything is in the Sun Vanished Twitter story itself.
Mhm.
Because if you actually read through everything that's going on, and like even reread through it, like I highly encourage anyone who doesn't like really care for the short film or something, or just find romance in general meh, to like reread all of TSV, because the I would venture to say the majority of it has absolutely nothing to do with the sci-fi. I mean, like, yes, the sci-fi is there, but a lot of times it takes a back seat for the character drama, for the character conflict, the stuff that is at the forefront and is the most important part of the story. So to me, I think maybe people get hung up on that, maybe because when it's actually being played out uh like on camera, I think it's a bit harder to ignore. But like with some of the conflict between characters like TSV and Danyan, that I think that's easy to overlook, because a lot of it is happens off camera and is just talked about, but it's not like you're actually seeing that conflict happen. But in the
Mhm.
short film, you see all of this going on in a very condensed time frame, which also may be part of why people don't are maybe turned off by it. I think if I told this exact same story in twice the time frame, like if it was 40 minutes or if it was a full movie length, like the stuff I'm actually wanting to do with this concept, um
Mhm.
I think people probably would be fine with it. I think it's just because I packed so much into 22 minutes that it may feel a little jarring, and I understand that. But it's also like, read the title. This is proof of
Uh,
concept. This is
Proof
like
of concept.
yeah, this is to get like the whole thing. Like I don't think so. Maybe I should just explain real quick what that means. So like a proof of concept means that this is like a working version of what the final project would look like. This is a tool to use to pitch this concept to studios or investors or anyone that might be interested in taking this to the next level, and showing like this is what we can do on this amount of budget with this much time. So give us more budget and more time, and we'll make a bigger thing. So that's like that's the end goal. This short film is not the end goal. This is just like I was happy to be able to get the crowdfunding and share this with social media, but this wasn't the end goal. This is to just a launching point to get to the next level.
Have you gotten any offers yet that you're willing to disclose?
No. I am not willing to disclose whether I have or haven't.
Have you gotten any constructive criticism that you think you'll take into account for the next short film?
Well, if there is a next short film.
If there is a next short film, yes.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of the criticism that is constructive, and I have taken into account. And for any projects I do in the future, it's good information to have and kind of test the waters and see what people like, what people don't like, what people feel like is too much or too little. It is interesting though to see some of the conflicting information though, because some people say that too much of the monster or the sci-fi stuff was shown, and others say too little of it was shown, which kind of gives me the vibe that I hit the mark pretty well. I feel like it was a good middle ground if like there's conflicting opinions on if it was too much or too little. So, but yeah, stuff like that is like definitely. So, I mean, every time I make a new thing, like the reception, no matter how like mean-spirited or even if it's in bad faith, like that stuff is very, very important for me, and I definitely take it all into account.
That's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah, man.
So moving on from the short film, we move into questions about the Twitter specifically.
Okay.
Now there are quite a few TSV short films on YouTube that I'm sure you've watched. Going off, okay, hold on, let me start all of that over again. So, segueing from the short film, there are many TSV short films on YouTube that I'm sure you've watched. Did any of them at all stick out in your mind? And what would you say to any of those creators if you could give them any kind of advice regarding their short film?
Yeah, I think there's a few that come to mind. I think it's super interesting to see kind of this. It's like the same thing with like the reception of the Twitter account, and to see how people interpret a lot of like the events of the Twitter account differently, and how they would translate that to like a more cinematic perspective, like making a short film. And a lot of these fan short films are kind of funny, just because a lot of them is just kids doing it for fun, and that's great. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I love that. But I guess if I would give any advice to any of those people making short films, I highly recommend make, like, the fan stuff is great, and I absolutely appreciate it a lot. But with some of it, I'm like, dang, I wish this person would just like would make an original idea and run with it and just do it there. Then, because then it's all their own, and they can do whatever the hell they want with it. I think there's a lot of potential for some of these young creators to do that and to really. I mean, that's what I did. I mean, I made Cave of Shadows when I was 15, and it doesn't matter if it's good or not. I put myself out there, I put my stuff out there, and it paid off. I mean, in the long term, it absolutely paid off. So I highly recommend for these creators to take like any ideas that they may have cooking in their mind, to just run with it and see what happens.
Awesome. I agree. Now, I wanted to ask a sound design question specifically relating to the Twitter. How did you replicate the sound of the headlights in TSV, because you've talked about before how it's sort of like it's supposed to sound like a camera going very fast. But what did you do to make that sound happen?
I did Foley sound design of a camera shutter, and then I took it into my editing software, and I altered it in certain ways to until I got a a desired effect that I wanted. Kind of a very, like, it's like something that sounds like a camera shutter, but it's off in a way that I think is kind of disturbing to hear. And the immediate reaction I hear from people as soon as they hear it, they're like, "Whoa, that's freaky." Just the sound, the way it sounds off. It sounds wrong in some way, compared to like a normal camera shutter. But yeah, I just used a camera click shutter and recorded that and then messed around with it.
That's fascinating. That's really, really interesting. Um, so moving on, you had said once in the FA Nexpo interview that you appreciated practical effects more than CGI effects, specifically relating to unfiction pieces, and that
Hmm.
definitely shows with the short film and the Twitter account. Except for, I would say, the most prominent example, the ships. Do you
Hmm.
think there is a way to create the ships in a practical fashion? And if so, would you ever consider using it? Why or why not?
Hmm. I mean, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, something like that, like the TSV ships are very I mean, the way like the short film is probably the exception with like because we went like full like actual like 3D modeled, fully CG, everything
Mhm.
tracked into the shot, blah blah blah. But for the Twitter account, when the ship shows up with the thunderstorm, that is like a totally bootleg poor boy way of of the way I did it. Um to because it was like I made it only in 2D, and then just like hand keyframed it into the shot to make it look right. um
Mhm.
so stuff like that is, I think it almost gets to a point where, like, I think that is practical in a way, in that, I mean, like,
Mhm.
I think there's definitely value to having stuff done in camera because it's way harder to make it look, it's way harder for it to look off in the way that a lot of CG stuff looks off. And then your brain automatically goes, oh, well, that's obviously fake. Um, Especially with like things that should be real, like an alien ship doesn't really conjure up like an idea of like, oh wait, that should be a real thing in the sky, that's totally fake. It's like, well, yeah, no shit, it's fake. But stuff like a creature, a humanoid creature, if it looks off in any way, you're instantly gonna lose um some aspect of immersion just subconsciously, just because the person would go, oh, that looks like CGI.
Mhm.
So that's like the kind of thing that I would say to do practical for, which I did with the short film and have been doing for the Twitter account. It's all just like kind of smoke and mirrors, trying to figure out how to make this these creatures look um off enough, but without having to go super extravagant on out of out of budget, basically,
Yeah.
to make these things look like, um I don't even know. But so yeah, I think I would say, um like, poor boy VFX. I guess that's the best way I could put it. I think that's sort of is the new practical, in a
Mm.
lot of ways. It's um it's only a couple steps removed from doing like stop motion, like what they would do back in the day for like uh 40s and 50s monster flips, where they would, have these giant creatures, but they were really just tiny little claymations. um yeah, I think that's the new, kind of the new thing, and I think it's really interesting to see, and I really appreciate it whenever Unfiction pieces kind of do those sorts of things to really sell the realism, especially in a found footage setting. When something's found footage, it really sells the realism to do all of that with practical, quote unquote, with maybe a little asterisk next to it, but practical effects.
I agree. I think in Marble Hornets, I mean, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
The fire, like I don't know why I called him Joseph. Alex setting the house on fire. I'm still not 100% sure how they did that.
But it looks real as shit. I mean, you're just like, oh my god, they're burning down the house. Like it looks entirely real, and you're like, whoa, that's nuts. Stuff like that really, I think it totally sells your thing way more than trying to I think a less, maybe in saying a lesser creator is maybe going too far, but a less nuanced approach would be like, oh, we'll just do the fire in post and we'll just track it into the shot. It's like, yeah, well, it's so easy to mess up that it can like make it look so stupid so quick, and then nobody's thinking about the in-world complications of wow, these characters are in a burning house. They're just thinking about how dumb the VFX shot looks.
And so even if no, go ahead, finish.
No, you go ahead.
Even if they get the VFX shot correctly, it's still, I would argue that I don't really think there's a way to make that feel as like good or as like surprising, shocking as doing whatever the hell they did.
Right.
VFX is it's the new form of illusion. I often hear, and I agree absolutely. But for something like fire, or for something like in our field where we don't really have unlimited hours, budget, and the best VFX artists and programs to make stuff like that happen. I mean, you can be a genius, and that's kind of the beauty of the field that we're in. We're all technically supposed to be rough and tumble on the streets, indie kids that are just trying to make something fun. And then every so often we get somebody like you who is a genius when it comes to cinematography or VFX or scripting or what have you.
Thanks, man.
So
I mean, I think, I definitely think like just breaking down the fire thing, because that's a good example. I think like you could totally pull that off with CG and VFX and whatever, but the attention to detail to make it look realistic with a found footage medium and like that camera, like the subtle little nuances that your eye can detect would be off. Stuff that makes it feel real because it's imperfect, like as soon as the fire gets lit, it's so bright it would overexpose the camera, so all you would be white. Stuff like little details like that, where there's really, unless you're willing to put thousands and thousands of dollars and thousands of man hours into making it look as realistic as possible, as imperfect as possible, imperfection to look perfect, which is kind of a cool irony. But why do that when you can just do it for real and just burn a house? Just I still don't know how they actually did that for real.
I would love. I need to research that. I hope they've answered it at one point, and if they haven't, I need to have one of them come on the show. I don't care.
You totally should
have Tim or Joseph or Troy or whoever. I would love to have them on the show and ask them like, how the fuck did you make that happen?
Yeah.
did you actually burn down that house?
Yeah, exactly.
They have an NDA on the side there for me to sign, and they can't they answer. Not sure. Yeah. So moving on. Uh, this is totally going in a completely separate direction.
Hmm.
But why do you think a majority of TSV's audience is people who are not very active in the unfiction community? And I say this from experience.
Hmm.
I've come across so many people like in my real life that were like, I'm talking about my friends and I'm talking about you, and I say, yeah, my friend, he runs a Twitter account. It's super super cool. And they're like, what's it called? Is the sun vanished? Oh, dude, my friends watch that. They're like super obsessed with it. I even saw like two ladies that went to my high school that
Hmm.
follow the Sun Vanished Twitter account on Twitter, which is
That's
like
awesome.
that's beyond my imagination. That is like I can't even begin to comprehend that. Why do you think a majority of why do you think people like that aren't, part of our sort of niche in the internet like that sort of thing?
Um, yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of it boils down to, and whenever I answer this sort of question, I inevitably get into like a fuck unfiction type case. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think because it's so weird that that the sun vanish has brought, like, people are weirded out that the sun vanish has brought in such a very normal audience compared to most ARG and unfiction projects. It's like, well, then we're doing ARG and fiction projects wrong. We should be able to get the normal people, the people who have never experienced something like that before. Like, that's like, what are we doing? Why are we just catering to like the 15 people in the ARG community who like to solve puzzles and get into really really absurdly complex lore stuff? Like and I think there's a time and a place for that, but also like explaining the sun vanished to someone, like if you're giving someone the elevator pitch, it's pretty simple. It's a sci-fi story, but the character is explaining everything that's happening and taking photos and videos and posting it to Twitter. That's simple enough. That's like, people will be like, oh, okay, I gotcha. That's really cool, and then they want to go check it out. It's very very accessible. Whereas, try to explain to someone what House of Leaves is, someone who's never like
Of
touched
course, you're gonna
anything
use
like
House of
it.
Leaves.
It's absurdly difficult, and I don't think that's inherently a bad thing, but I think it goes to show, I think we have a lot of ground to cover, unfiction creators do, of making our stuff more accessible to the everyman, to the person who isn't, wrapped up in all this stuff all the time, um and is maybe, uh uh scared to get into something, but, scared off by complex lore, scared off by, not actually understanding what's going on, because then that's not engaging. We just need to get better at, we need to get better at pitching our projects to normal people.
That's fascinating. I hadn't thought about it from the perspective of unfiction projects being unaccessible, but now that I think about it, uh, a lot of the things that come out of this community are very inaccessible to the common folk. Not in an insulting way, just that like,
Yeah.
and even I've noticed, until you just mentioned that, I've noticed that a lot of the more popular unfiction pieces are ones that are pretty easy to understand. Like you had said, the elevator pitch. I mean, Hi, I'm Mary Mary is a good example. You
Yeah.
have all of these channels covering Hi, I'm Mary Mary, and it's because, well, it's a lady who's trapped in her mind house space, or the sun vanished. I mean, it's a guy who's detailing the events of the sun vanishing. Or
Hmm.
don't hug me. I mean, don't hug me. I'm scared is a little bit uh less, not as easy to pitch, but you can kind of just say like, yeah, it's a weird puppet show that you would
Yeah.
usually find
Yeah,
on,
usually,
yeah,
you start off with Don't Hunt Me, I'm Scared, or like Dad, like the Dad YouTube channel,
yeah.
or Poppy, or any of these. the conversation starts off, well, it's this and this, like this is the normal part of it, but then things get weird and twisted and it's off, like there's something off about it. And
Mhm.
and then people go, oh well, that sounds really interesting. I wonder what's gonna happen with that. Like where did they go with it? And
Mhm.
that's the hook. That's what gets you latched
Yeah.
in. Um, Whereas, yeah, some of these, and I think that's something that maybe a lot of unfiction creators aren't even really thinking about, because the majority of the audience that like the majority of unfiction players or consumers or whatever that are like know the genre by name and are like active in the community and whatever, they
Mhm.
they're like yeah, I understand like the surface level, but like give me the meat and potatoes of like where's the lore, where's the puzzles, where's the like the deep like bottom of the iceberg type stuff. And so I think us, like people like us being surrounded by that mentality kind of turns us off to like, no, like we still got to pitch this to like people who aren't like that. And that's how you get a bigger audience. If you're like worried about having a small audience, cater to the normal person. Don't cater to the unfiction player.
I agree. I think I do think that we often get, at least creators often get caught up in this idea of catering to the normal unfiction audience member, when in reality, maybe we should try to shift our focus to, every we should try to shift our focus to everybody. We should try to be accessible to everybody. Which
Yeah.
really, I'm going to talk about this with you a little bit later, but I'm so happy that we are sort of, what's the word, for formalizing the idea of unfiction. Well, first of all, I mean, we have like an actual definition now that isn't
Yes.
ARG, that fits the mold of what fits the mold, quote unquote, of what we have. And
Yeah.
then we have this process for sending out unfiction pieces now. Like, it's not, you can either send it to Nick or you can post it somewhere, and if you want to come out as the creator, you can do that. Whereas back in the day, it was like you get crucified if you come out and
Yeah.
you say,
The
hey,
secret cool club
yeah, this,
of
yeah.
dudes who like, yeah, we know what's going on. Like, yeah, get out of here. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. uh I'm happy that we're getting a little bit more, like I said, formal with it, because now it's like you can actually show your shit off to people and
Mm-hmm.
not have to worry about it being too niche. It's still niche. We're still a niche, sort of corner of the internet, but we're not doing that whole gatekeeping thing anymore. It still
Yeah.
happens, but it's
Yeah.
not as easy for them for people to gatekeep
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah.
Well, and I've been very, very, as you know, I've been very active and vocal about those types of people who do gatekeep, and
Yeah.
I make it very well known to them that what they are doing is wrong and not okay, and they need to stop. And it's not, and I've purposefully distanced myself from that crowd as well. I mean, I think that's probably one of the main reasons why I still don't do very many puzzles in my projects, if any. It's not because I don't like puzzles at this point. It's just because I want to deter any of the like those types of gatekeeping people, because they usually tend to be uh like puzzle like code heads and puzzle solvers, and that's like their thing.
Mm-hmm.
um so that's I tend to stay away from that for that very reason.
A solid call on your part. So moving on from that, we move into general questions about any other projects that you've had your hand in. In the Critical Android Fan Expo interview you had in late 2019, you said you didn't think you'd continue Factors of Zero. What changed?
Ah, um, I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, and this has happened a couple of times with Factors of Zero, because um, I'll kind of like, it would maybe surprise you or anyone who's like a fan of Factors of Zero, or who's watched it all the way through thus far. It may surprise you for me to say that I've actually rewrote it, like I've reinvented what Factors of Zero is a few times now, throughout the years of its run. Um, a lot of it is just to keep it fresh for me, because I there's a lot that goes into the behind the scenes of making Factors of Zero, a lot that people don't see. Um, but I kind of I've gotten burnt out on those concepts that I've been really trying to nail down in Factors of Zero. I've gotten burnt out on them several times, and so I kind of reinvent the series to give it some more life and some more longevity, so I can actually finish it. Um, and there's been a few times in that process where I'm just like, yeah, I'm kind of like not feeling what the series is right now. Like not interested in it. It's not speaking to me. And I know if it doesn't speak to me, then it's not going to be good. Like if I just force it and make something, I know it's not going to keep the same quality as the previous videos that everyone's come to know and love. So and that all of that process that I've explained is very long and arduous, and it's kind of and it's also, it probably wouldn't be as much of an issue if Factors of Zero was like a main project, but because it was originally it was always intended to be a side thing, next to in between my other main projects. That's kind of what it's there for, and I can always I enjoy having that where I can always kind of return to it and play in that universe if I get burnt out on something else. Like that's happened a couple times, like when I've gotten burnt out on doing the Sunvanish Twitter account. I'll take I'll just flip the switch and just completely disengage from that, and then go forward with something else. What? You there, Joe? Oh, god damn it. Hello? Can you hear me? It's my fucking internet again. It's doing like the dropping down to like 5,000 ping. Thankfully, I said my whole piece on my end, so uh I was just saying I can disengage from TSV and then go to Factors of Zero and always have that side thing to like come back to whenever I get overwhelmed or burnt out on one thing.
All right. So, moving on for, well, actually, no, I wanted to ask, when are you going to put out the next episode?
I don't well, even if okay, if I did know, I would tell you, but I don't know. Actually, no. If I did know, I wouldn't tell you. But I also don't know.
Okay. That's fine then. Why did you stop production on CS or Counting Sheep?
Uh um so a the how can I say this? Is there may be a time where I return to it, or I tackle it from a different avenue, but the subject matter, which from the videos that are out can already tell, it's like something that is about isolation, and in a alternate universe where um you know government mandated isolation exists, and then the pandemic hit. That was like the worst timing possible for something like that, and I realized that very quickly as I was making it, and how serious, because at that point I think I released CS4, CS5 or something like that, and then stuff started locking down and it was getting pretty serious, like in the in near the beginning of 2020. Um,
Hmm.
so I I was like, yeah, this is not the right time for a story like this. Which is a shame because I think it's a cool idea and it's something that I really want to tackle, and I'll probably revisit again, just like I was talking about with Factors of Zero. But yeah, definitely not the time now, and I don't think it will be for a little while. Uh,
Do you think that? No, go ahead. Finish.
well, I was just gonna say, I actually experienced the same sort of thing with Sun Vanish. I mean, that's why there was a huge, um, like pause on the story, in 2020 for the most part, because when I had posted a few tweets in the middle of the pandemic, the overall response in the replies was like really, I mean, like overwhelmingly negative in a very bizarre way. Um,
Hmm.
and I was like, what's happening? Like, because people were acting like it was the quality of the tweets, but it was the same stuff that I've always been doing. But man, people really, really did not like that, and
Hmm.
I was trying to think of why, and I was like, oh, it's the fucking pandemic. It's people being stuck at home and angry, and they're taking it out on something, which is totally fair for a totally valid to hate a story about an apocalypse when you're living in one. I think
Hmm.
that kind of and that readjusted my priorities too of realizing that I was like, oh yeah, this is not the right time for the sun vanished and not the right time for counting sheep, anything like that. That's kind of an apocalyptic vibe. Definitely not the right time for that. But as we've been coming out of quarantine and people are getting adjusted and a lot of I think we're getting back to where the sun vanish can continue again, because I think it's different enough. But counting sheep is just like way too close to home. And I also think even if I think if people were even receptive to it, it would still get I think it would still get shit for being like, "Oh, you just came up with this idea because you made it during the pandemic." And you're like, "What if we lived in a pandemic?" Like that whole like self-insert type of writing. I'm like, "No, no, no. I I've been sitting on this idea for years. It's just
Hmm.
wrong time, wrong place." So, there you go.
Would you say that any of your quarantine experience has colored or perhaps will color how you continue counting sheep?
Um I think it gives me some clarity, maybe not because of my own experience, but from what I've heard from other people's experiences. I think it gives me some clarity on do's and don'ts of how to tackle that sort of concept and
Mm,
to treat it with respect and reverence and not trample over it. Especially relating to like mental illness and that sort of thing, and to
I see.
be mindful of that.
Awesome. Uh, if you could, this is a question I know you're going to be excited to hear. If you could change anything about Cave of Shadows and how you produced it, what would you change?
Oh Lord. I would. But see, I don't know if that I don't know if I can answer that question honestly, just because I feel like I've like the mistakes and the things that I did while making that as like a fucking kid, like
Mm-hmm.
absolutely helped me v- in the future. Like from that point on, I learned very quickly on what to do and what not to do. It like in the anything from in the ARG community or just filmmaking in general, um, learning how to deal with audience reception, good and bad, taught me a lot of very valuable life lessons that I honestly don't know if I would change. I think it happened the way that it should because I think my future projects after that have turned out really well, and I think a lot of the
Yes.
way things would be. I think things would be much different, and I think I'd maybe even have more of a hard time learning the lessons that I learned with Cave of Shadows if Cave of Shadows didn't exist, or if I did everything right, if I somehow did all the right things at age 15, age 16. You know, I just I don't think that exists.
Hmm. But there's nothing that you think you would want to, that you would maybe tweak a little bit to kind of improve the overall product, or just like maybe don't do this. Like there wasn't anything that you thought like, maybe I could have done this, or I could have thought of this, or maybe I could have added this, and that would have been interesting.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, in that sense, I mean, I have a very detailed like lore background about the whole Cave of Shadows universe and everything that goes on in it.
Yes.
And I've been building that up even after Cave of Shadows ended. So I think all of I think that sort of thinking of like what I would change or whatever. I mean, I am I want to return to that story as a reboot in some way, shape, or form in the future. And I've been working on that for a while. So any answers to those questions I can't even really say because it's probably going to be in the reboot. So
Are you willing to divulge anything
no,
about the reboot?
no.
Okay, all right, I thought not. I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then we're gonna go on break for a couple minutes.
Okay.
In 2019, you did a TSV Q&A where you stated that there was a mysterious project and that it would be fairly obvious that it was you working on it. Are you willing to divulge what this project was?
No.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
I had to think about that one for a second. You almost got me.
Damn it. Curses. Alrighty. Well, we're going to go on a quick break, everybody. All right, everybody, we're back. So, Aidan, why do you think it is that indie filmmakers and perhaps even Hollywood filmmakers don't understand the importance of sound design?
I think it's just easy to overlook. Like I think a lot of people, a lot of creators will just be focused on the visual element because that's like a very stimulating part, and I think it's very easy to for sound to just kind of be in the background, like, oh yeah, sound, whatever. But it's like, and I've heard other people say this too, but I'm of the mindset of the philosophy that you can have bad sound and great video and it will still feel not good, versus if you have great sound and bad video or okay video, it's a way better end product. There's just something to sound. I think I forgot. There's like a bunch of people who've quoted the thing where like give a certain percentage with like 30% of your film as video, 70% is sound, or some will say 90% is sound, or some, you know, stuff like that. But I think that's true. I think sound is like the most important part, because it's also really it can really immerse your audience into the world that you're trying to create, more than video can. Especially like, just think of like how many people are going to watch your thing on just a laptop or a phone screen. You know, they're not going to experience your film or your project or whatever. They're not going to experience it in a cinema, in a movie theater. So video kind of ends up like getting the short end of the stick anyway. Versus there's a lot of people who like, if you have headphones, you're instantly ahead of the curve. Like, and a lot of audience members do use headphones and do or a decent sound system. So it just makes such a world of difference. And I mean, even like with today's technology now, I mean, like your standard like up-to-date iPhone has like stereo speakers. So like when you tilt your phone sideways, it gives you like stereo input, and it creates like kind of a surround effect. So you don't even have to have headphones anymore to like have like a good audio experience if you're like even if you're just watching something on your phone.
Yes,
Um, so like that kind of thing is like, oh well, then yeah, sound's gonna be the most important thing.
totally. Uh, Now, if you had to apply a label to yourself in terms of content creation, we've talked about this before. You have like every single hat in the book. Uh, what would you say of those hats fits the best for you? Are you the most comfortable being labeled as?
Mm. Probably storyteller, just
Okay.
because that's very, very all encompassing. Like it's vague and it sounds maybe kind of like some PR BS where it's like, yeah, I'm a storyteller. It's like, yeah, well, what does that mean? But I think there's a lot of people like you and me who do wear all the hats or a lot of hats and are behind these stories doing all the things. So instead of going down the laundry list of like writer, director, editor, blah 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 blah, whatever, you're telling your ultimate that like a lot of those things are just a means to an end. Like you aren't a director to direct, you're a director to tell a story. And so storyteller kind of says that right out of the gate. Like that's your motive, that's what you're doing, and you just fit all the pieces together to get to that end goal.
Mm. Uh, Completely. This is a completely different direction. Uh, when did you start writing music?
Ooh, it's a good question. I'm trying to think. I think it was in middle school. So I was probably like 11 or 12. I started because at that point, like dubstep was like the big thing. So I was like, okay, I'll start. I don't have to have any like physical instruments. Although living in Nashville, there wasn't any shortage of that. But for me, being so comfortable with the computer already, I was like, oh yeah, I can just make an entire genre of music that's just solely synthesizers and digital soundscape. Like yeah, I'm totally on board with that because it's more easily accessible, especially at that age,
Mm-hmm.
without a very big learning curve. Uh, so I started with making dubstep and then moved into just a lot of practice, and then started moving into scoring my own things. Even if it was just I think I at that point I had a lot of private projects, just stuff that I was just doing just for my own sake. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I would just use that as good practice to score my own films. Then I started, uh, actually doing like sound design stuff and more of that for my own projects. And then I started helping other people, and then I just kind of snowballed from there.
Mm, I see. What would you say is the most important thing that you learned from that whole process, if you could pick it out?
Mm. Dang, that's a really good question. I think I think communicating. Like I think it's very easy, at least from a like I'll tackle this from like if you're scoring a music piece for a film. So it's like it's not like a standalone thing. It's like complementing the film. If you're doing that, I think it's very easy to get caught up in just kind of like mimicking what the visuals are saying or what like what's happening on screen. Like for example, oh, the characters on screen are happy, so you play happy music. Like that line of thinking, I think that's an easy ditch to go into. Not that it's necessarily wrong to any degree, but I think there's a whole dynamic range that you're missing out on to really dig into kind of the core of it and what makes music resonate with us through film. Because a lot of like the music is there to communicate the more complex things that are happening that you don't really see on screen maybe. um and like people that are happy on screen but uh sad music is playing or some or melancholy or something a little more sentimental. It's like, oh, now there's a different depth to what's happening here. You see the
Mm-hmm.
characters are happy on screen, but there's something going on underneath, and it kind of communicates there are ulterior motives there, what the characters are thinking and feeling, and that leads you to connect with them more because of that depth. And then now you just left with a memorable film experience. I think, and this might launch into a whole other thing. I'll try not to rant about this, but I've talked about this with you and in private before. But Marvel music has a really nasty habit of doing the former, of just taking the simple route of like, oh, characters are being funny on screen, so we play funny music. If the sad things are happening on screen, we just play sad music. Stuff like that, where it's like, oh, it's kind of sad to see, just because it's like, oh, you're missing out on this depth if you just went a little farther.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I agree completely. I'll try not to rant about it as well. But well, it's funny because you opened my eyes to it. I didn't realize how, dare I say it? Yes, I do. Shitty the music in Marvel is, because it's like, okay, I know people are gonna hate my saying this, but what piece of music do you remember from Marvel that is not like the actual superhero theme? Right? Like, what do you remember? What piece of music do you remember that is besides the Avengers theme or Thanos' theme?
Yeah.
Right? Like
and a lot of people have made that argument, and I think it's also important to note, like, because like I don't think a memorable theme necessarily means a good one, or that's like the only good music, but or memorable in the way of like, oh, it's got a catchy melody. Like the Avengers theme is very catchy. It's very memorable in that way because you remember the melody, and kind of tagged along with, you remember the moments when it's played. You remember when they're doing the superhero lineup and they're doing the cool poses, and then the music's playing. It's like, oh yeah, it's a really cool moment, and then that is ingrained in your memory. But all of the other Marvel music that isn't that is very, it's mixed very low in the actual film. Like it's not played very loud, so it's not really noticeable. It's more like ambience rather than like actual music scoring. And it's also, like I said before, it just kind of matches with what's happening on screen. So like, if you watch a scene that's sad and you take the sad music out of it, you have the exact same experience. It's not like where, like in some of these other, these classics, even stuff where the music isn't like, here's a good example, kind of tying everything back together, the TSV short film. If you took that theme where the sunlight is coming through the windows near the end of the short film, if you take the music out of that and you just play the visual, it's not as moving. It doesn't make you feel anything. Or maybe it does a little bit, but I will say, in my opinion, it doesn't. Like a lot of the music is doing a lot of the legwork there to give you that memorable moment.
Yes.
And it doesn't. It's not even that it's a very memorable melody, or that it's like catchy in like the pop song sense of the word catchy, but that feeling is ingrained. We remember with our feelings, so that's how you remember the music.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to say this one thing about Marvel movie music. I feel that for every Marvel movie except for Black Panther. I think Black Panther definitely has the best music out of any Marvel movie. But that's not fair because it has fucking Ludwig Göransson behind it, and that is like
yeah, he's a very, very talented dude.
If you want genius in the 21st century, you go to that guy. I mean, I don't. It's not fair. I don't even know the names of any of the other people who work on Marvel on the Marvel movies like score. But Ludwig Göransson and all these different pop artists and hip hop and rap artists that they have working on it. I mean, it's not fair. It's not fair to make that comparison. But anyway, I think I agree. And we're going to talk about the short film, that theme specifically, not the sunlight theme, but Skylar's theme specifically,
Mm,
evoking feelings in a bit when we workshop the train tracks theme.
gotcha.
But before we do that, I want to ask, what is your process for making music? What tools do you use? Please be as specific as you possibly can. Plugin names, instrument names, any of that.
Gotcha. Um, I use a lot of, so I use Fruity Loops for all of my music composition. Um, uh, Combined with Sony Vegas, because Sony Vegas is where I do a lot of my sound design stuff. Probably both that, some people in the audience listening to this, hearing both of those names are like, what? It's like such bizarre, obscure softwares. But Fruity Loops less obscure than Sony Vegas. But I use both of those kind of in combination. I go back and forth depending on what, like if it's more musical music, like if I'm using orchestra, like I'll use like Labs, Contact, those types of plugins.
Mm-hmm.
I will I'll use Fruity Loops. But for some of the more percussive or less melodic sounds that you can kind of hear in the soundtrack, I'll use Sony Vegas, because that's where I do my sound design stuff, the stuff that's not very musically, like it's still melodic sonically, but it's not like actual music. But the combination of the two is kind of what creates this more unique flavor to the sound, versus than just using the plugins that I have available to me, or just using the standard stuff that most like film score composers would have.
I see. What do you remember any of the plugins that you used for Fruity Loops, if you have any, off the top of your head? Any of those names?
There's a lot of synthesize, like some of the default synthesizers that come with Fruity Loops are actually very, very good. I've gotten a lot of use out of those and just kind of pushing them to their limits. So like anything that comes prepackaged with Fruity Loops is awesome. Anything from Spitfire is great. All of their stuff is awesome. Contact and anything from Native Instruments and their like orchestra and strings and their sample library is really, really cool too. And I take all of that as a basis, and then I will add a lot of the stuff I use is actually very just comes prepackaged with Fruity Loops. So plugins obviously not so much, but some of the synthesizers and some of the a lot of the effects tools and stuff that I use to kind of mold the sound the way I want it to is all stuff that's just available in regular Fruity Loops. I'm not like a very big like a plugins guy when it comes to Fruity Loops. I have a few that I toy with, but and I'm getting a bigger library as things go on, and I get more of a budget to do that kind of stuff. But a lot of times I haven't had the budget, so I just kind of just use what I work with. And really, I mean, really, I think that's like the key for anyone who's like wanting to get into film scoring or just music at all, is just use what you got. I mean, there's so much that you can toy with if you just sit down and play with like free stuff that's out there, or just stuff that comes, like I said, prepackaged with Fruity Loops, or I'm sure Pro Tools and other like digital audio workstations have that kind of stuff where it's like you can get a lot of longevity and a lot of mileage out of that.
I agree. Now, all of these questions about music and sound design is to just illustrate a point that I want to illustrate to the audience. I've researched all of the interviews that you've gone through over the years and podcasts and anything. I've never heard anybody discuss with you specifically the music. the music that you make in your spare time. I mean, nobody ever talks about Linger or I know you don't like self-loathing Anthem anymore, but I mean, you know, that or even one made by Eli that you helped with, you know, Car Ride. No,
Yeah.
nobody talks about that stuff, which to me is a sin on their part for them not to recognize, you know, your quality as not only a director and a cinematographer and such, but in all of that, but as a musician, a composer. And that shocks me that people don't talk to you about that more. Everybody, please, I'm begging you, if you have the time, you should be looking at Aidan's audio or his I should say his discography as much as you possibly can. I mean, my personal favorite from you is still New Year's Day. That song is incredible. I fucking
that's
love
my
New Year's
favorite
Day.
too, currently.
Yeah, I would hope it is. It's incredible. Please, I'm begging you, everybody. I want you to go listen to New Year's Day whenever you have the chance. Aidan, I think I want to have you on for another episode or two to talk about your discography specifically.
Okay.
I want to focus. I want to hone in on that because you know, we as Unfiction creators. I talked about this in the Hi Mary Mary episode, but we really don't focus on music as much as we should. And you specifically have a very heavy focus on music. You know, you're a musician. That's like one of the things you started with was making music. And I want to bring light to that. Now, speaking of music and music that you've made, we're going to walk through your process and workshop Skylar's theme, or as it's listed as well, Train Tracks. Here in the beginning, you can clearly hear like that sort of synth experience that you say that you've had. Walk me through it. Tell me, what did you think? What were you thinking when you started making this piece?
So actually, this it's interesting because this piece has kind of taken like a few forms. I just started with like the first thing I started with was just that piano chord. I really liked just that same repeating piano chord. It's a jazz chord, so it's got a lot of it's not very definite or very stable. So it's fun to just like repeat that over and over and kind of toy around that. And so really it started like this. An earlier version of this was just the piano and like the strings in the background, and that was it. And I was like, this is cool, but as I was rescoring, kind of restructuring a lot of the score and mixing it with the like some of the few final edits of the short film, I really wanted to take it to the next level. So I added this like vocoded synthesizer in the background that kind of is very moody and adds some kind of more ambience to contrast the pretty stark attack of the piano chords.
What were you hoping to evoke with the piece when you were starting to think about it?
Just sort of what's going through Skylar's mind at this point, kind of the loneliness, the melancholy, but also kind of like the beauty in that in a very weird way. Like it's hard to kind of put words to, but I think that's like kind of one of the things I love doing with music, of like especially like some of the more negative emotions that characters feel and we feel as human beings. Just like interpreting that through music, but then making it very beautiful. And I think that creates an emotional response that's super impactful.
I agree completely. What now for in terms of instruments, so you used a piano, and you used You said that you used Fruity Loops for this.
Mhm.
Perfect timing, that violin. Did you use Fruity Loops for that violin, or did you call somebody in to do that?
No, so all of that is just sampled stuff from native instruments through Contact. Um, and I think also some probably some instruments from Spitfire Labs. Um,
Mm.
uh, so just kind of some texture. But the synthesizer was just native in Fruity Loops, and yeah.
Fascinating. Absolutely my favorite piece from the short film. Uh,
Thanks, man.
I would love it. Well, it's already out for people to listen to. Or wait,
Yeah.
is it out for people to listen to? Can
Yeah,
people?
it comes with. I'll probably put it on Spotify at some point, but
Oh,
right now
please.
people can buy it for price of a coffee, $3 on Gumroad. You get that and the short film itself and director's commentary, behind the scenes, posters, still photos, like the works.
$3 is absolutely worth it. Everybody, oh my God, do yourself a favor, give yourself a present, go buy that package on Gumroad ASAP. All right, moving on from that, I want to ask you a couple questions about Unfiction in general.
Yeah,
Uh, if you had to choose, what is your favorite Unfiction piece?
Marble Hornets.
Okay,
I
I
think
knew
you
that
knew I
was.
was gonna say that. Yeah.
I knew you were gonna say that. I just wanted to be clear. Let me be
Yes.
clear. Uh, can you talk about why you love it so much?
Um, I love the atmosphere that it has, and I think it's still to this day pretty unparalleled.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all of like the characters, the story, the lore behind the story, the sound design, the cinematography, which is something that you don't really hear people talk about very often with found footage, but genuinely the cinematography of Marble Hornets, all of this is weaved through this very unique kind of like addictive atmosphere that you just kind of just want to like sit and like soak in for hours at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Like like to me, like watching Marble Hornets with all the lights off, maybe like on a rainy day where it's like dark outside, um, and you're cozy in bed, and just like watch it, just binge the whole series. Like that's like the best. It's the best viewing experience.
Totally agree. Absolutely. We even did that like a few months ago. We all just sat down
Yeah,
and
that's
watched
right. Yeah,
Marble Hornets. Oh, dude, that was amazing.
so good.
I cried. Oh my God, I cried so hard. I didn't think I was going to. I didn't think I was going to weep as much as I did watching Marble Hornets. I didn't even think I was gonna weep. Period.
Yeah,
And I bawled my eyes out, dude. Oh my God.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I think the story quality is Hollywood level in the sense that there is a meaning behind all of it.
Yes, which
Uh,
is important. Yes,
that
it's
is
meaning.
very important. The characters are very dynamic and have a lot of depth. And there's a lot of twists and turns in a way that like a long form series like this should have. It really does play out like a TV show in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and of course the even though it is all found footage and all from like a camcorder, the cinematography and the way things are angled are like perfectly imperfect in a way that evokes a very cinematic feel to me without it being literally cinematic,
Mm-hmm.
which is I've still yet to see anyone else kind of get that nail that part down besides Marble Hornets.
I think Hi, I'm Mary Mary gets it the closest that I've seen
Yeah,
thus far.
yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
I agree. But yeah, like I would put Hi Mary Mary and Marble Hornets in the same vein as I would like Chronicle or Blair Witch
Yeah.
Project or some of these other found footage projects that do feel cinematic in a very unique way that is kind of tantalizing.
Mm-hmm. Now on that topic of unfiction pieces and how you feel about them, now you're gonna have to specify what is your least favorite unfiction piece and what is your most disappointing unfiction piece, and there is a difference between those two things.
Okay, I think they're probably the same. They're probably this.
See,
no, maybe
okay,
they aren't.
let me elaborate. Right, your
Okay.
least favorite unfiction piece is one from the beginning, from the get-go, where you were like, God, this sucks. And then most disappointing is to say there was a point where you were like, wow, this is really good, or you thought it had some amount of potential, and then it completely fucking bombs it.
I guess to me, I think like I understand the distinction, but to me, I try to give everything the benefit of the doubt to start out with, and usually it does start out with me being interested to some degree. I mean, that's the only reason why I would feel strongly about it, in my opinion. I mean, I don't think there's anything that I can think of that I like outright hated from the very first second that I saw it. All of the ideas that come to mind are projects that I felt disappointed with, at some point going in, either early on or closer to the end, feeling disappointment from the potential that was there. Okay. So I guess I think probably Meat Sleep would be the obvious choice. And indeed. I guess if I'm listing two, it would be Meat Sleep and Pet Stop. Which I know probably some people may be surprised or dissatisfied to hear. 'Cause I know there's a lot of people who love Pet Stop.
Yes.
And I understand. I get it. I get it. It is just not. It's not. Well, for one, it turned into not my flavor of ice cream very quickly. Not to mention just it being like absurdly complicated, to the point where it doesn't even feel like it means anything. And when I say it doesn't mean anything, I'm not saying that there isn't a plot, because there is one, and I do think it like there is it goes from point A to point B. It has characters. It has all the earmarks to make it like an actual like narrative. So I'm not saying it's not that, but I think the deeper meaning that I would look for in my media, something that has like some deep rooted themes, is kind of lacking. And when I say kind of, I mean very lacking. It's not there at all. Meat Sleep, on the other hand, is another one that, I mean, I probably started hating sooner than I did Pet Stop, but I mean, that's just because it isn't even a narrative. I mean, it doesn't even pass the test to be like an actual story, because it isn't one. It is literally just creepy images, and creepy sounds. And it's amazing. I think it's really funny now, because as I've talked about Meat Sleep over the years, it's gone from having a pretty loyal cult following, fan base, who would tried to, even though this was before canceling, tried to cancel me for not liking Meat Sleep, or shit talk me out of the conversation or whatever. It's gone from that, when like right after it ended and I would talk about it, or now I talk about it, no one remembers it. That's the saddest part. Nobody, and when I say nobody remember, I'm sure some people out there do remember it and do remember liking it, but it hasn't had any sort of longevity after it died out. It doesn't have the same kind of following that like Pet Stop does, or 70 Broad, or some of these other projects that did fizzle out, and but their fan bases stayed pretty strong and pretty loyal. The Meat Sleep fan base, quote unquote, is gone, like, entirely. And I think that's very telling for the type of shit that it was.
Reduced to atoms.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gosh, I wonder why. It's almost as if it really didn't have anything of substance to it to begin with.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't want to talk about Petscop too much because I have a whole episode dedicated to that coming up sometime. But I agree with you 100%. I really don't think it was. It just feels like it doesn't have anything going for it. It's just, okay, yeah, it's a cool idea, and then, like you said, it kind of fizzles out. It doesn't. It feels meandering. That's a great word for it. Meandering.
Absolutely. There's a whole lot of nothing that happens in the middle, and then there's some cool things that happen at the beginning and at the end, and that's about it.
It's not even like meandering in the way that Unfiction pieces usually are, like in Slenderverse, where it feels like people are just doing fuck all for a long time. This is meandering in a way where it literally feels like there is not a goddamn thing happening on screen. I mean, it's 30. There's a 30-minute video. I want somebody to tell me one thing that happened in that 30-minute video. Maybe there was one thing. Okay, give me 5 things that happened in that 30-minute video, and then we'll talk about Petscop meaning something.
Well, I think and I think a lot of that comes down to, I think a lot of these ARG Unfiction pieces, like Petscop, try to, whether intentionally or not, I'm not saying that Petscop took inspiration from Marble Hornets, but I'm just drawing that parallel because I think Petscop wanted to, like Marble Hornets did, create, like cultivate this kind of atmosphere around it, where you would watch it and it would evoke a certain feeling, and you would be kind of addicted to that. And I don't think it entirely failed at that. But the one thing that Marble Hornets has that Petscop does not have is the substance to back up that style. And so that's why, I mean, that's why I don't fault anyone for liking Petscop. I totally understand, because a lot of people who do enjoy it they don't even really, at least this may not be true all around, but the Petscop fans that I've met are usually ones who are only like a little bit into the lore or understand the lore. They're not like they're not there for the lore. They're there for the atmosphere. And then the lore is like a nice treat. So to me, so I understand liking it for that reason, but it just did not work for me because it didn't have substance to back that up. And furthermore, we live in a time now post Petscop where things like Disaster Crow, or sorry, Catastrophe Crow.
Motherfucker,
exist.
You son of a bitch! You got the name wrong. Can't believe you.
Sorry. Where the things like that exist, where it's like the same, it's the same elevator pitch of like, yeah, this is a game that doesn't exist, and let's talk about that. But it tackles that from an entirely different perspective, and does actually have quite a few things to say, while evoking the exact same atmosphere that Petscop was trying to emulate. So, and then there's even other examples like, oh Lord, I'm gonna really fuck up this name. Zhuangji
game. Yeah.
There's stuff like that where, I mean, and that's like that's a very
obscure,
unknown, very obscure reference. But there's stuff like that where it's like, it's even like okay, you want something longer than Catastrophe Crow? Okay, here's this. You know, we have a couple different variations of Petscop, but better, that exist now. And I just, that to me entirely like removes the need to even think about Petscop in my mind.
Yes, or even Been Drowned, right?
Yeah,
like
that's another great example, and that's even older.
it's even older, man. Like the elevator pitch of "this game does not exist" thing has been done like a bunch of different times, and
Hmm.
in my opinion, every single other time besides Petscop, it's been done leagues and bounds better.
Yes.
I would even go as far as to say that Catastrophe Crow. I talked about this with Nick, but I don't even think Catastrophe Crow needs the Unfiction stuff. I think it functions just fine on its own as a short film. It doesn't need anything else because you get everything from that,
Sure. Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And
But
and,
I mean,
and,
there's
and it
extra
has
goodies.
yes, and there's extra goodies, and that's great. I love that. But dude, if it's able to tell its whole story in
Hmm.
just that amount of time, and it doesn't meander,
Hmm.
why in God's name would you ever want to watch Petscop or care about Petscop like that, other than for just like vibe, like atmosphere? Vibe and
Yeah.
atmosphere, fine, whatever. You do you, man. That's great. But in terms of meaning and in terms of like actually doing something interesting, literally, I can give you those three pieces did it far better than Petscop ever did. So I
Yeah.
know people aren't
I
gonna
totally
like
agree.
that. I know people aren't gonna like that. You can dislike the video. I don't care. I'm just telling you the truth, man. I'm just spitting facts. All right, moving on from the, wait, actually, hold on, off the record really quickly. I have this slide which has one more question on it, and then another slide after this, and then the final slide after this. Uh, I don't know if we're gonna get to Chosen tonight.
Yeah. No, there's no way.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure you just wanted to make sure. I'm
How,
sorry.
dude? No, it's all right. I just didn't realize we're gonna be doing. I mean, we're pushing almost
2
2
hours.
hours.
Good. I'm fine with that, man. I'm happy with a 2 hour video. I mean, it's
Okay.
interesting. We're talking about a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think, and I think
Totally.
people are gonna want to tune in anyhow. You know, because
Yeah.
it's you. And I also think the chemistry is gonna keep people listening.
Hell
But
yeah.
anyway, yeah. Um, so moving on from things that we dislike, move on to things that we like.
Mm.
You're a true veteran of the Unfiction community. You know, you've been around for a long time, both as an audience member and as a creator. Are you ever blown away by the sheer growth of the community, both in defining itself and in accepting the new Unfiction format?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm pretty. I guess part of the veteran status, you can even call it that, is I'm pretty critical of the unfiction community in general and the way that it conducts itself as like a corporate entity.
Mm-hmm.
But I think on the plus side, I'm very happy with the stuff, like a lot of the things that exist that aren't even self labeled as unfiction, that people are now getting into because they saw stuff that we're making. Um, that is always really amazing to see, TikTok, scary videos and stuff like that that are
Yeah.
now circulating a lot more. I think stuff like the stuff that we've made is has really paved the way for that, and I'm very thankful.
I agree. Absolutely. Oh, hold on. Yeah, okay. So, moving into our final line of questions with, just general media, shooting the shit about that.
Yeah.
In a few interviews you've done, you've said that Walter Mitty is your favorite movie. Does that still hold true? And if not, what is it?
That's a good question. I think no. I think it fluctuates between three different movies based on my mood. It's either Walter Mitty, Blade Runner 2049,
Mhm.
or Tenet. Those three really are the kind of the current contenders for my favorite movie, and it kind of changes. Like if I see one more recently, I'm like, yeah, that's it. But I mean, I think in all honesty, I like them all pretty equally. I think those three are really, really great movies.
I agree. I agree 100%. I, I don't, I've told you this before, but before I was your friend, all I did was watch Marvel movies and movies that I had watched when I was a kid.
I'm so
Uh,
sorry.
I know, I'm sorry too. I'm sorry for that poor motherfucker. And then you showed me Walter Mitty. I think that was the first movie. No. Sorry. The first movie that I watched with you was Blade Runner 2049, and I watched
Okay.
that. I watched that the exact same day that I watched Gakugarashi. That I finished Gakugarashi.
Okay.
That
Oh,
was,
jeez.
oh my god, dude. No, see, you say oh geez, but that was like my mind like opened to the universe, man. That was like fucking come to Jesus moment. You know,
Yeah.
I was blind, now I see. That was beautiful, fantastic. If anybody in the audience hasn't seen Blade Runner 2049, Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and Tenet, first of all, where have you been? Second of all,
Yes.
stop everything. Literally, I don't care if you're watching this podcast and you're busy with that. Stop watching the podcast. Go watch those three movies. They are, I cannot sing their praises enough. You need to go be doing that. And if you haven't watched Gakugarashi, and that's an anime, I understand the anime isn't for everybody, but I seriously recommend that you give it a shot.
Yes.
It's incredible.
I agree.
Moving on from that, what is your least favorite movie if you had to choose?
I don't really think about my least favorite things very often, especially when it comes to movies.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, I may legitimately not have an answer for you.
No, you don't. Not even Sausage Party.
I mean, yeah, Sausage Party is, but see, like at least I'm of the mindset now, like especially with like unless there's a new movie that I just hate with a burning passion, but that's usually fresh in my mind. But stuff from like years ago, I'm just kind of like, yeah, it's trash. It's not really good. Anyway, moving on. Like that's kind of where I'm at. I guess in recent memory, we want to get real controversial for a second. Hereditary. I did not like.
Yes.
And you and I have talked about this before.
Many times.
Yes.
Many times.
That's probably, I wouldn't say that is, because it's not like a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. Like I wouldn't put that in the same category as like I don't know, like Food Fight or something. Like some of these movies that are just like poorly made. Like it's a well-made, like from a technical standpoint, it's a very, very well-made movie. I just was not, I was not vibing with it at all.
So would you say that's your most disappointing movie that you've ever watched?
Yeah, probably. Or in the top. I probably not the most disappointing, but one of the most disappointing. I mean, and that's kind of how I feel. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about a lot of movies in general. That I like. I don't really hate movies. I just find them disappointing. That's where the emotion comes from, and that's where the passion comes from. Is because it's like, oh man, you were so close to being good, and you fucked up, and you missed it. You missed it. That's what gets me fired up. More than anything else.
Nick had said this, and he's absolutely right. It's a very divisive movie. I either have people that like fucking love it, like to the moon and back, and then you have people that are just like, no, this movie's bad. It's a really bad movie. And we're on the other side of the side of the coin. But I appreciate understanding that. I think we should all understand that as like,
for sure,
some of us that are kind of it's not really that good, and then others that are like, oh dude, yeah, this is incredible. I would love to understand why someday as to what exactly it is. I mean, I know why I don't like it, but I'd like to understand why the people like it. And what it is.
Well, I think it's because I don't like, maybe this is too assuming, but all the things that I've heard from people is like they really like the horror elements, and like it's very scary, and you like have like very little idea of what's happening most of the time. and all of that. I have no like. I think the scares in it are good. I think the tension is good. I think the suspense is good. Um, up until like the last like 10 minutes or whatever.
Yes.
So, and yeah, I and that's sort of yeah. Most of the see, and I think that's the thing with like a lot of movies I find disappointing. It's rarely on a technical standpoint or like thinking that like it's rarely something like, oh, the horror just didn't work, like I was laughing instead of like it wasn't like the intended reaction. It's usually not that. It's usually just like I disagree with the movie's message or concept in a way that doesn't really reflect my worldview of of like how that kind of stuff should play out. So yeah, I think that's also why I have a unique view on bad movies, quote unquote. Because usually, like, I don't. There's not very many actually bad movies. I just think there's misguided movies.
Yes, I get behind that.
Yeah.
Moving on from moving on from movies, and going into games. You've said that you've said multiple times that Soma is one of your favorite games, if not your favorite. Is that your favorite?
Yeah,
And
I think
and
so.
Okay, are there any other games that you would add to your favorites list?
Yeah,
Like to detail?
Beginner's Guide is another one. I think I've mentioned that in the past too.
Yes.
That one's very, very good. I like that a lot. The Metro series is very good, as you know.
Oh, I know. I know.
I'm sure you'll probably find a way to make an episode about the Metro series on this podcast.
See, I actually already have, because he did it technically started out as an ARG. Technically, because when Dmitry Glukovsky, he put it on the internet, he did ask people for their opinion and audience participation for the book.
Yeah.
And it did actually change what the book was eventually going to end. And also adding on to that, there's the Metro universe,
right?
And that's sort of an unfiction type scenario. Except it's not bound to the internet. It's bound to real world. They're all books that you can get. On that topic, I am pissed off that none of them are in English. I've talked about this with you before. I am Dimitri, please, I'm begging you, dude. Come on. Get some of those books in English. I would love to read them. They're in every language but English. Yep. That is unbelievably frustrating.
Yeah. For real.
But anyway, do you have any other games that you would add to your list?
Not that I can think of right now. Those two have stayed pretty, unlike movies where I'm like, I have a lot more that I like. I think I'm more picky about games, just because I think a lot of them kind of missed the mark for me, and maybe it's just because I'm more of a film buff than anything else. But I like my games very cinematic most of the time. Either all the way cinematic or entirely the opposite direction, like 8-bit arcade, or like that sort of thing. Or some maybe like a combination like Five Nights at Freddy's. That's probably another one that I would add, although that's like a whole series. That's not really a game. But love the FNAF series. I think it's amazing. I'm trying to think of what else. Last of Us 1 is very, very good.
Indeed, yes.
I like that to me. That's like the shining example of like, this is how you make a cinematic game, and how you make like a really good game that has the same quality of cinema. Really dig stuff like that.
I'm waiting for you to give one more example. I'm waiting for it.
Oh Lord, I don't know. What do you think I'm gonna say?
Aiden, come on. We played this like every single day.
Oh, Halo.
Yeah, Halo. Yes.
I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, yes. I really like Halo. Okay. It doesn't like. I enjoy it for different reasons. Like it's one of the few games I actually enjoy playing, like passively and not for like story reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost feel like that's kind of cheating, and probably why I don't put it in my like all-time favorites list. I don't
Damn.
know. I know to you that's probably cold, but I mean, I think it speaks to it has its own strengths in being very 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 fun.
Mm-hmm.
Just fun, just like it doesn't have to like the story stuff is cool too, and I enjoy that, but like the multiplayer is very fun,
I
and I
agree.
don't feel that way for very many games, if
No,
any.
no, you do not. You talk about that a lot, where it's very specific how you feel about a game, and like, yes, the gameplay, okay, whatever. You
Yeah,
said to me many times, like,
yeah,
you're
gameplay
not
is
a, yeah.
usually the one of the lower priorities for me, like when it,
Mm,
which is kind of the opposite. It's like flipped for gamers, like
mm,
capital G gamers, that sort
yes,
of thing.
they're very
So that, and
specific
that's,
about the gameplay. Yeah, they
well, I
want the
was just gonna
gameplay.
say, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why like I don't I probably that's probably the reason why I don't like very many games.
Mm-hmm. Which is fair. Uh, I've often found with creative folks that their music taste changes with the seasons. Would you say this
Yes.
holds true to you? And
Yeah.
what are you listening to nowadays on the cusp of summer?
Ooh. I usually in the summer months I kind of shift back over to like vaporwave, 70s, 80s revival, kind of like disco tech type feeling stuff.
Mm,
Very funky music. I'm
mhm.
really in the funky music vibe now.
Anything that
Um,
you would specifically recommend to people that are listening right now
ooh,
in that genre?
trying to think. Uh, Parcels. I was just listening to some of them today. Parcels is very good. They're very like kind of funky, more retro feeling.
Mm,
For stuff that's more like 80s revival that sounds more modern but takes after a lot of 80s roots.
mm.
Valley is a very good band. They have a lot of good music. Um, they're I think they're fairly popular.
Mm.
Yeah, I did that kind of stuff.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Alrighty, uh, we're about to wrap up here, everybody. Finally, I'm sure some of you did not expect the episode to go this long, but it did. Uh, or just you're just too interesting, Aiden. I can't, hard to not listen to you talk for extended
Thanks, man.
periods of time. Uh, now, one last question. Uh, you're a man who has had quite a lot of creative experience, and in that time of creating things, you've molded yourself into a cinematic genius with cinematography and music compositions on the level of big budget Hollywood films. Like that kind of quality is equal to the stuff that you're doing with the actual budget of less than three halves of that. You made a short film with like what, $1,000, $1,200, and you have these other films that like have budgets of like upwards of like $10 million or whatever. And I would argue that the Sun Vanished short film is equal to that. The only thing that it's not equal to in terms of that is running time. Uh, but it's a proof of
Yeah,
concept. Uh,
right.
what would you say to people who feel like that kind of quality, that level of quality, is unattainable uh, as indie creators? You know,
Mm,
and how would you advise them to take the steps needed to go in that direction where they think they can't go?
that's a really good question. I think I would say that a lot of, and I think this is also this also kind of ties into like a lot of my favorite unfiction stuff, like Marble Hornets is a great example because that's also something on a shoestring budget that feels very very cinematic to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's something about like cinema isn't really about budget. I mean it is because you gotta get it. You gotta get asses and seats and eyeballs on it. But like at the end of the day, a lot of what makes cinema and what makes good storytelling in like a cinematic language is just the approach. and the methods of how things are executed. And a lot of that, I think a great deal of that can be achieved without a big budget. And it just takes patience and a lot of focus to detect. Because like I will say for me, I've been watching movies and been consumed by filmmaking and movies for years and years, and was even obsessed with it growing up before I knew I wanted to be like a filmmaker. So I've had a lot of time to kind of hone in what that to replicate and evoke those feelings that those films give to me, and be able to still do that on a small budget. So I would encourage any creators out there who have ideas of what they want to do. I would like try to rework it where you can do it with a small budget or no budget, even better, and just do it, and then you'll learn from it. There's a lot of that too. Is the scale? I think also a lot of creators, and I've talked about this before on other podcasts too. A lot of creators think, oh, like even the Sun Vanished. Like, there's a version of the Sun Vanished that it's a giant multi-million-dollar blockbuster, and the scope is huge, and you're seeing like everything go down. But that isn't the optimal way to tell that story. You can tell it, big scale, but small scope. Like that's how, at least that's how I tackle my projects, and I highly recommend other people to do that, especially if they have like wild harebrained ideas. Just take that idea and how can you tell that story with what you already have available to you, the tools that you already have available. If that looks like you running around with an iPhone, then so be it. Make it, do it, and then get feedback from it, and then see where you can improve. It's the only way to get better, and to get your, not just get your name out there, but just to hone in your craft and do more of the stuff that you want to do. Just do it. Don't wait around for like, oh well, I need actors, or oh well, I need a crew, I need a budget, I need a better camera, I need all of these I need things that may never come to fruition. I mean, this TSV short film is really one of the first real deal projects that I've done that actually starred other people besides me. And I've been making stuff for years before this. So I think that just goes to show that just work with what you got, and then you can work up to the point where I'm at, and even further of like, now you can get the crew, now you can get the cast and the stuff that you want. But it's a ladder that you got to work up towards. So there you go.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much for tuning in. I would like to say thank you to Aidan for coming on to the show, and an incredible series and an incredible short film. Check it out if you haven't already. Whatever platform you're watching on, Anchor, YouTube, Spotify, etc., make sure you're following the channel, specifically YouTube, where I am uploading at least once per week every week. This time was no different, and neither will the next. Make sure you follow me on all associated platforms for regular updates on what's coming. If you ever want to request a guest, a specific topic, or want to ask a question, shoot me an email at ag3ntidaho@gmail.com. That is, once again, ag3ntidaho@gmail.com, agentidaho@gmail.com. Thanks again for tuning in. Remember to look behind you, and take care.